Hi, welcome. My name is Michelle. I work at the Longmont Public Library, and I'm hosting the event tonight featuring Dr. Deanne Rudden. I'm so excited to have you all. Couple quick things. I work in the Adult Services Department, and we put on programming regularly, so you all are obviously tuned in. Tell your friends. Thank you. This is supported by the Friends of the Longmont Public Library, which is our volunteer organization. It's only $15 a year to join, and they literally make all of our programming possible. So if you are interested or you're a fan, just come see us at the library. We'll tell you more. If you need the bathroom, they're just out this exit door on my left, down the hall. There's also water there as well. Closer microphone sounds better. Thank you. It's really hard to do this stuff smoothly. And I just want to thank you all for coming. We will do a little bit of question and answer after the presentation is over. This is being recorded by Longmont Public Media, just so you're aware. And may I introduce Dr. Deanne Rudden. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I really appreciate all of you coming Wednesday night and spending a little bit of time talking about ears, hearing, and all the things that come with that. I was thinking when I first came into the room tonight, this is probably the closest I'm ever going to be to what it would feel like to be a politician. So I'm glad I'm on this side of the table. So I want to start by introducing my team, because one of the things that I know, having had a practice now for almost 30 years, is that I don't do it alone. We have an amazing team of people that I work with that help make everyone's experience in our office even better. From left to right, I have Jill True. She's also right here in the back. Just give a little wave. She is our hearing instrument specialist. Then we have Maddie, our front desk administrator, me. Shannon, our speech language pathologist, as well as Jessica, our audiology assistant. So lots of people to help take care of you, not just me. I have a little bit of an agenda tonight, but I also want this to be more of a conversation. So if you are in a place where I'm talking about a particular topic and you have a burning question that you really don't want to wait till the end, please feel free to raise your hand. Let's make this casual. You can definitely let me know and we'll get it taken care of in the moment so you don't feel like it's just burning in there. I'm going to go over a few basics about the ear, just so you have a working knowledge of anatomy and how the ear is working. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the latest technologies that have happened in the last year. It's been a really exciting year for technology in the hearing industry, and I want to share some of that with you so you know what's out there. And then last but not least, I want to make sure you know how to resource yourselves and also know what kind of things you can do to take action to take care of your ears and hearing, both from a prevention standpoint as well as advocating for yourself in your environmental conditions. But first, I'll start with a few statistics, because sometimes you can sit with hearing loss and feel like, gosh, is it just me, or is this happening to other people? Hearing loss is something you can't see, obviously, so it's hard to know if the people around me are hearing like me. Do they have better hearing or worse hearing than me? So it's a little difficult, but I will tell you, you are not alone. There are 2 in 10 people in this country have hearing loss. That's a lot of people. And in fact, it is the 3rd most chronic condition impacting Americans. It is more prevalent than diabetes, more prevalent than cancer. So a lot of people are experiencing some degree of hearing loss. And it's not isolated to older people. In fact, if you look at this statistic wheel, you'll see the largest piece of the pie is in 65 and older. But if you add up the other pieces of the puzzle, there are actually more people with hearing loss under the age of 65, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about. We usually equate aging with hearing loss, but that's not necessarily true. I want to start with talking about the journey from ear to brain, because I will tell you, when I started school, and I won't tell you how long ago, but it was like in the 90s, we used to think that the ear kind of lived on its own little private island, right? It was just kind of there. It wasn't impacted by anything else in the body. But we know that the brain and the ear are a very important linkage to one another. And things that go from the ear have to go up to the brain so that we can make sense of them. But I'll start at the ear level. The outer part of your ear is the part that you can see. It's called the pinna. It's also, you may hear it called the auricle sometimes. The ear canal itself down to the eardrum. The middle ear is that space behind the eardrum. It houses the 3 smallest bones in your body, along with a tube that goes from the space behind the eardrum down into the throat. So if you've ever gone up and down out of the mountains or out of an airplane and your ears have popped, what you're actually doing is opening and closing a valve in your throat that lets air pressure come in on the inside of the eardrum to equalize with atmospheric pressure. Fun fact, right? That's like your trivia for your next party. The thing that we like to focus on mostly, though, is the inner ear, because 95% of people that have hearing loss have issue in the inner ear. So that little snail-shaped organ that looks blue in the picture but is not blue in real life, inside that snail-shaped organ, you have lots of little hairs that are tuned, kind of like keys on a piano. And for a wide variety of reasons, those hair cells can become damaged. They may deteriorate with time-related changes in our bodies. They can be affected by things like noise exposure, medications, sometimes genetic predispositions. So you may have a family history of hearing loss that filters down through generations. And those hair cells, if they are damaged, sometimes if you see like scans of them, they look bent. Sometimes they look fused together. Sometimes they're missing in certain areas of the cochlea as well. And I always like to say that a lot of times what happens with people is it's not that they don't hear. It's that they are not understanding what's happening. It's loud enough, it's just not clear. I'm not making sense of it. And it's like at any given time, we're all playing a very elaborate game of Wheel of Fortune, right? For many people, they hear well in the lower pitches, so they hear the power of speech, which is where the vowel sounds are, but they're missing the clarity, the S's, the T's, the F's, the V's. So imagine you're playing Wheel of Fortune and you have all the vowels all the time. Now, depending on things like distance, whether you know the topic of the conversation or not, whether you can see facial expressions and body language, you may have more or less of those consonants turned around at any given time. Get enough of them turned around, you don't need every letter. Your brain's going to put it together for you. So the ear's only job really is sound awareness. I hear it or I don't. Everything else that we think of as being important to hearing and understanding is actually happening up in your brain. So we like to say, what's your brain doing with what your ear hears? It has to go through kind of a stair step of importance. So the first part of that is discrimination. So think about, do I know the difference between p and b? Identification, do I know that p means p and b means b? And that if I put a bunch of those sounds together, I can comprehend a word that makes sense to me and that maybe I've had a memory of, or I can put in some kind of context. So most of what happens isn't happening in your ear. When we're assessing your auditory function, you may have had an experience of hearing little beeping noises and pressing a button. That's actually the very foundational part of assessing your hearing and your auditory system. Very important, we need to know what your audibility is like, but we also want to look at some of those higher level functions. How well do you hear in noise? How well are you able to discriminate? Are you having issues with any of those things that may be barriers to using technology to get you where you want to go? Because we know now from research that when you have untreated hearing loss, it puts a greater strain on your brain, which can cause a heavier cognitive load. That feels very big. But you're working harder, right? Your listening effort has increased. So we always want to take care of any hearing loss sooner rather than later, mostly because we want your brain to stay sharp and working and processing that auditory information appropriately. And there was actually a very important landmark study, and I apologize, this slide is super busy, so I'm going to boil it down for you, but it was a study done in 2017 by the Lancet Group, and what it showed is that addressing hearing loss in midlife is the #1 quantifiable risk factor that you can address to prevent cognitive decline. So the sooner we treat your hearing loss, the more likely it is that your brain will continue to have proper function and work well for your lifespan. I'm going to switch gears for just a moment and talk a little bit about tinnitus. And I've had a couple of people already ask me, tinnitus or tinnitus? And both are correct, truth be told. Tomato, tomato, potato, potato. You can use it interchangeably, however you'd like. Tinnitus is defined as any sound that you perceive that has no external sound source. So if you can identify a sound and point to, that's my refrigerator running, that's not tinnitus. If you hear chirping, ringing, buzzing, and you can't put it to somewhere else, or no one else in your environment can hear that and it's happening within you, that's tinnitus. For most people, in and of itself, it's not harmful, but it can be bothersome. One of the things that we look at when we're addressing tinnitus is it bothersome? Are you having an emotional reaction to the perception of this internal sound? If you're having just, I hear it, it's not a big deal, it doesn't really meet the criteria of something that we're going to look at treating per se. But there are those people that have an awareness of an internal sound followed by an emotional reaction, typically negative. I don't like that. That's driving me crazy. I want to get rid of that. Now what happens is that your limbic system in your brain starts to trigger. Your limbic system is your fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. And when that happens, your brain starts to activate. And it's a very primal response that prepared us both from a physical standpoint as well as a chemical standpoint to run away from things that might eat us. But your body doesn't know the difference. So when that limbic system kicks in, now you have emotional reaction and your brain says, I am under threat. And once it decides it's under threat, it's going to continually go back to check to see if the condition has changed. If the condition remains the same and you're still aware of the internal sound, now your cycle starts all over again. Awareness, emotional reaction, disturbance. And that kind of patterning in the brain can become chronic for people, and it can become, in some cases, debilitating. And that's not at all where we want to go. So our job as audiologists is to interrupt the cycle. So that place between awareness of the internal sound and emotional response, to retrain the brain to not trigger that fight or flight mechanism. And there are lots of therapies and things we'll talk about in just a little bit. I'm going to pause here, take a little sip of water, and see if anybody has any questions they want to ask for this first part. Yeah. Oh, do we have a mic? That would be amazing.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
So is tinnitus in your inner ear or in your brain?
I love that question. We used to think it was in the inner ear. So, if you didn't hear the question, it was, is tinnitus or tinnitus in your inner ear? And I'm going to say it's complicated. Most of what we believe now is that it is a neurophysiological response in your brain. It does often go hand in hand with hearing loss, though. So sometimes when your ear is not functioning properly and it's not sending sound from your ear up to your brain for processing and in a normal way, the brain kind of sends its own little feedback loop. So there's ear to brain, there's also brain to ear, kind of like, I think of it like pushing a pedal and a brake in the auditory system. And oftentimes what happens is the brain is saying to the ear, hey, give me more sound. I need more sound. I'm missing these things. And the act of the brain increasing its neural potential is what you're perceiving as sound. So it's phantom, but it can be bothersome. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Anyone else? You guys are anatomy experts, ear experts? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about how technology has changed over the last year. And I will tell you, this last year has been kind of just an incredible year for innovation and how we are using technology in the hearing space. My picture is kind of relating this to smartphones. So if you remember back in the 80s, we had these ginormous phones with the big antennas that you saw. The brick, exactly, the brick. I always think of like Wall Street and they're carrying those giant phones around. And then next we had, got rid of the antenna, things got a little bit smaller, but still it was basically a phone, right? And then we got the BlackBerry. And now we can type messages and we can get information going back and forth. And then we got smartphones. So smartphones kind of revolutionized, put a little computer right in your hand. The same evolution is happening in the hearing space. So we started out with hearing aids that really just made everything louder, right? And that was great because it sure beat the ear horn, right? But at the same time, making everything louder isn't always better. So now we got hearing aids that would put the speaker down inside your ear and have the bulk of the electronics behind your ear. So not everything was kind of stuffed into that one little space. And that was great because it gave you much better fidelity of sound, but it still was making things louder. It wasn't always doing all the things we wanted it to do. Then we got Bluetooth technology. That was another point of revolution because now we can connect hearing instruments to smartphones. The smartphones can act like remote controls, so you don't need anything extra. You're carrying your phone anyway. You can go in there and make changes. You can do different things, but also you can stream anything that's coming from your phone. So phone calls, music, media, all of that was coming right into your ears like a pair of headphones. But now we have AI. And I know, like, we all go, oh no, not AI. But AI has actually revolutionized a lot of how we can process that sound. And all of the manufacturers are doing it now. So there isn't one manufacturer that's using it and the rest of them aren't. They are all on the bandwagon. But I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of confusion in the hearing aid space for you guys out in the real world. It is really hard to tell what a high end product is from something that is going to amplify sound and not do a lot of complicated signal processing, but they look in your hands very similar. So at the top of the food chain, I would put prescription hearing aids. So these are hearing aids where you have an exam by a professional, it's prescribed for you, it's fitted to you, and it's doing signal processing that is more complex for lots of different listening environments. The next level down would be over-the-counter hearing aids, and I'm going to call these the reading glasses for your ears. And for some people, that's actually perfect. That is what they need, right? If you have problems with your vision and you go to a restaurant and you're trying to read a menu and that's the only place that you have trouble, if you pull out your reading glasses, take care of business, take your reading glasses off, you're good to go. That's all you need. I'll use myself as an example. I used to have lots of different reading glasses, kind of like in different cubbies and different places. They were different strengths. And then one day I was like, enough. I'm going to go to my eye doctor and I want something that can carry me through lots of different environments. So now I get to wear progressive lenses. That's a lot like prescription hearing aids as well. So now I can see up close, I can see mid, I can see far away. I have one pair of glasses and I don't have to worry about trying to manage all the other things. So the other thing with over-the-counter hearing aids is the federal government released these onto the market in 2023 with the caveat that you did not need professional intervention and that it was for, and I love this term, perceived mild to moderate hearing loss. How do you perceive that you have mild to moderate hearing loss? If I asked you, do you have mild to moderate hearing loss? What would you say? Maybe? I don't know. Because she says so. Exactly. But I want to, I'll give the government a little bit of a break. It was an entry point. It is an entry point for people. And I think of it again like reading glasses for your ears. You can dip your toe in, give it a shot, see how it feels, and maybe it works really well for you for a period of time. It is, though, only for mild to moderate hearing loss. So if your hearing loss is more substantial or you have more complex needs, you're probably going to fall short with an over-the-counter device. Personal sound amplification products were like the old school over-the-counter hearing aids. They were available on the market. In fact, we in the hearing industry, we kind of joke, there's always been over-the-counter hearing aids. They just weren't called over-the-counter hearing aids. They were called personal sound amplification products, or PSAPs, you sometimes heard them called. And these were, they couldn't say they were hearing aids. They couldn't say they were making things louder for people with hearing loss. But if you happen to have hearing loss and wear them, they would make things louder. Hearables are a category of product that are kind of like today's AirPods. AirPods from Apple are headphones that you wear at ear level, but they now have some amplification built into them. In fact, you can take in their little health app a modified hearing test, and it will give you some mild to moderate amplification and give you another kind of entry point into trying to hear better. And then last but not least, I would say assistive listening devices are really any other things that are on the market that are trying to help people with hearing loss. So that could be anything from like a light that alerts you to the doorbell ringing. It could be a remote microphone that your significant other might wear to help bring the sound closer to you in your hearing aids. It could even be something that you go to a venue and use a little amplification device in a venue like this is. So all of those would be considered some kind of assistive listening device. So there's tons of choices. And what I would encourage you to do is start with getting your hearing checked and letting a professional help kind of direct you in a way to something that's going to work for you. That's what we're here to do. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty and talk about what's happened in 2025. Because 3 really big things happened in 2025. Our advanced speech and noise performance just got exponentially better, mostly due to AI. AI is like a computer chip that gets trained. So it's trained in millions of different listening situations. The companies take that data, they put it into the chip. So it's like already built in learning. It then goes into your environments and it says, aha, I know what this is and I know what to do with it. So you don't have to necessarily go in and make lots of changes and do things. They're very automatic, but they have lots and lots of data behind them to process the signal more efficiently. One of the things that happens with this technology as well, as we talked about, they don't just make things louder, they can actually assess the environmental condition. They try to suppress what they're detecting as noise-like information. And I think of it like if you were to look at noise on a scope, it would look like lots of people talking together. It doesn't have lots of ups and downs and variations. Speech has highs, it has lows, it has whispers and people dropping things off or people getting excited, all kind of in the same conversation. So it's very dynamic. The technology wants to take that signal and enhance it so that you are better able to detect what you want to hear from what you don't want to hear. And it's better than ever. The other thing that it's done, some of the companies have put built-in sensors inside the devices that act like gyroscopes. You guys know what gyroscopes are, so they can tell you where you are in space. And why this is important is that we know from conversation that we don't just stand and look in one direction and stay still when we're having a conversation. We're nodding, we're talking, we're pausing, we're tilting, our heads are moving, and the devices can sense even if you're sitting down or if you're walking. It's motion sensitive and it's turning and moving the microphones in concert with where you're pointing your nose. So very, very smart. Very low delay. And this is important because if we have less delay in the signal, meaning the sound's coming in, it has to go into the microphone, the chip of the hearing aid has to say, what is this? I'm analyzing this, and then I'm going to change it based on the prescription that's in there, and I'm going to spit it out into your ear canal so that you can perceive it. The longer it takes to do that, the more distortion that happens in the system. So we want things to be fast because conversation is fast and life is fast. And then again, the crossover with consumer technologies, we've got Apple being at the forefront of that, but there are also other products as well that have come to market that do similar things where you can get amplification right in your ear. Artificial intelligence, for me, is really just a way to say to you, it's more personalized and it is as automatic as we can possibly make it today. So can you make changes to those things? Of course, you can always override the things that the computer is trying to do. But our goal with any technology is for you to put it in the morning, kind of forget about it, just hear better, take it out at night, go to sleep. That would be like a home run for hearing technology. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, please.
Is it all?
Hold on just a sec. Let me get you the microphone.
Otherwise, you don't exist.
Thank you. Is it all in one to where hearing loss and tinnitus and sound sensitivity, is it all in one, or can you have tinnitus and not have hearing loss?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't have to be together. They often are together. But you can have ringing in your ears without hearing loss.
Mhm.
You can have sound sensitivity with hearing loss. That can be complicated. And you can have all three of them all at once.
Okay.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
That was a great question. Anyone else? Okay. More durable, more water resistant than we've ever had before. So, can you swim with it yet? No. But if you are somebody that has perspires a lot, or what my mom used to call it, like sparkling in the summertime, the devices can handle that a lot better. They're not as impacted. It doesn't cause problems with the circuit as much as it did in years past. I'm going to switch gears again and talk a little bit about innovation in tinnitus. So, tinnitus retraining therapies and tinnitus treatment options have really been around since the 80s. So, we've been doing ear level sounds, retraining the brain to respond differently to those sounds to prevent that emotional reaction from becoming fight or flight. And its effectiveness is in the 80 percentile. So high effectiveness. However, true tinnitus retraining therapy, the window of that treatment is typically about 12 to 18 months. Everybody looks at me that way when I say it. They're like, oh, like, because it's a long time, right? Especially if you are feeling like this is really impacting your life and you're looking for relief. There is a new product that came out on the market. It was FDA approved about 2 years ago. It's called Linear. Linear is unique because it provides bimodal neuromodulation. And that's a really big word for 2 different ways that we stimulate the brain to teach it to act differently. So there's an auditory component through headphones. There's also a tongue stimulator. So that's going to activate your trigeminal nerve, which meet in a part of the brain that we believe tinnitus to be most active. This type of treatment has become more revolutionary because that window of time for treatment, instead of looking like 12 to 18 months, it now looks a lot more like 6 months. And 6 months is much more manageable for people that are in significant distress. So it is something that there are specific FDA criterias that we have to make sure that someone that is a candidate for Linear is actually hitting those criterias. It is a class 2 medical device. So hearing aids are class 1 medical devices. Class 2 medical devices are cochlear implants, Linear, because it's inside your body. So we have a much higher bar to make sure that you're staying safe and that things are appropriately fitted to you. But it's a pretty easy treatment from a functional standpoint for you out in the real world.
I have a loud voice.
That's okay. We want to record you.
So just a clarification, when you say a window, is that the time from the onset of tinnitus to when you can be treated, when treatment opportunity ends, or the window is the time from the beginning of the treatment to the end of the treatment?
Thank you for that. When I'm looking at the window, I'm looking from the moment we start your treatment to the point at which we are recognizing a clinically significant change. Yeah. Some people have had tinnitus for years before it becomes something that either starts to become bothersome to them and they decide to take action, or they have felt like there wasn't anything you could do, because that's what a lot of people were told for many years. So yeah, window of treatment from start of treatment to clinically significant change.
I think what you're saying though is that this treatment doesn't make the tinnitus go away; it just makes you relax with it, right?
I will say that my goal for tinnitus treatment is never elimination, because that's unlikely. It does happen for some people, but really when I'm looking at it, if I were to say to you, hey, do you have tinnitus at the end of the treatment? It would be like, it's way over there. It's not here. So it is kind of teaching your brain to not go into that fight or flight mechanism, but also to learn that it's non-threatening and that it really needs to be pushed in the background. And it's not unlike if I'm wearing a watch, if I pay attention to my watch on my wrist, I will be very aware of it physically around my arm. Most of my day, I don't pay any attention to my watch. It is on my wrist. I'm not thinking about it. It's there if I stop, but for the most part, it's not causing me any distress. Did that answer it? Okay. There have been several clinical trials with Linear in order to achieve FDA approval. And then there was a TENT A3 study that was completed, which is a real world study. Why that's important is that if we take people from in a clinical trial and we move them out into the real world, we want to make sure that they're getting the same type of effects and the same type of improvements. So this study was actually done with 112 participants, which is a pretty big study from a medical standpoint. And the thing that I want to draw your attention to is that for participants with moderate or worse tinnitus, 70.5% of those people had clinically significant change in their tinnitus perception. That is a pretty darn good percentage because we know we're not going to get 100%. But if somebody said we have a 70% chance of giving you something that is going to improve your quality of life and make meaningful change in your tinnitus perception, that's pretty darn good. Okay. Any other tinnitus questions? That's usually a hot topic. I love it. Yay. Okay. We're going to do dueling microphones.
Hi,
Hi.
can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, not only do I have noise in my head, which is not ringing, but I also have vertigo.
Hmm.
And in 1977, I had a broken eardrum. And so, does any of this stuff go together?
That's a powerful question. I will say your ear and your center of balance are housed in the same organ. If you remember that little blue snail-shaped organ, at the top of it were 3 other little structures. That's your semicircular canals. So your semicircular canals is your organ of balance. So they share a common space. They share common fluid in the ear. So hearing and balance are interrelated. The hole in your eardrum contributes to hearing loss because your eardrum doesn't move well, and it can cause problems that way. So long story short, yes,
So
it kind of all goes together.
it's not as much hearing loss as it is getting around the shh that won't leave me alone.
Because of the hole in the eardrum?
I don't know.
Yeah. I would talk to an ear, nose, and throat physician who could evaluate that. When you have a hole in your eardrum, you don't have that nice tight container of air behind there. So anytime you breathe, you may perceive air.
It seems to go with the heartbeat. Bum,
Okay.
bum, bum.
And especially if it's in combination or in concert with the heartbeat, we want to make sure that it isn't some kind of vascular issue that needs to be looked at. So I would 100% have you see an ear, nose, and throat physician and have them look at that much more closely.
Thank you.
You bet.
So sorry to ask a second question, but I think it's pertinent to everybody. So the Linear, it's my understanding it's rather expensive. Does Medicare cover it?
Unfortunately, at this point, Medicare does not recognize tinnitus and tinnitus treatments as being covered. They are still considering them to be experimental, so there isn't insurance coverage from Medicare or any other insurance. If it is the case that we're working with somebody that Linear as a price point is something that doesn't fit for them within their budget, we can use other tools and treatment options that are sometimes no cost, sometimes low cost, or in conjunction with hearing aids or hearing aid treatments. So,
Can tinnitus be measured?
yes,
Oh.
I actually do tinnitus evaluations now. We measure the pitch of your tinnitus so we can know where you're perceiving this sound. We measure the loudness of your tinnitus so we know what we're working with and what we need to do to help give you some relief. And then we do some other measurements that try to look at where your blending levels or masking levels are, and if they are something that we can use in potential treatment plans. So that in conjunction with a full assessment of your auditory system to just make sure we rule out the big scary things is really what we do.
The last slide mentioned sound alone. What's
Mhm.
that?
So sound alone would be tinnitus therapies that work only with auditory stimulation. So if we were using hearing aids or over-the-counter sound generators, that would be something that would be auditory only. It would not be something that also stimulated the trigeminal nerve. Yeah. We got two.
Was there one in the middle here? Or did you still have? I saw your hand first. So.
So as an engineer, how do you sense tinnitus?
How do I sense?
Yeah, you say you measure it, the frequency.
Yes.
What are you measuring?
So I obviously can't measure it objectively, so I need your participation. So a lot of times we do a paired comparison. So I will play a sound for you and have you compare it to another sound, and then we start to kind of dial it in until we get as close as we can to the frequency of it. The quality of it is a little more challenging because oftentimes we don't have tools that generate sounds like buzzing, chirping, whooshing, that kind of thing. But we can at least have an idea of the frequency of it and how we might get at it with different tools.
Thank you.
Get my steps in.
Yes, I love that.
What if my tinnitus is often more than one pitch at a time
hmm
and often never the same?
Okay.
Is that common?
I would say it's not uncommon. If you were to come in and I was trying to evaluate you, if it's changing from day to day, we obviously can't know from day to day what's happening, but we can look at a snapshot or a window in time and try to measure the more prominent sound as well as any other sounds that might be mixing that particular day and make inferences from that, and kind of talk about how it's playing out for you.
And then is tinnitus bilateral? Is it ever unilateral?
It is. Most commonly bilaterally. People perceive it in their ears. Sometimes they perceive it kind of up here, more centrally, or it can be unilateral. Michelle, there was actually a gentleman here that has been very patient. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, to switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
I know that as we age, our sensitivity to hearing high pitched sounds diminishes. So my wife will often say, "Well, I told you that," and I'm not sure she really did tell me that, that kind of thing. So I know there can be subjectivity with that. Okay, but where I really have a problem too is when we go to restaurants and it's a loud background. I am totally lost in conversations. So I end up just kind of withdrawing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there good technology that can handle that?
I am going to say, yes, there is good technology that can handle that. But hearing aids alone may not get you to the finish line. So remember we talked about most of what happens with your hearing doesn't happen in your ear, happens up in your brain. So we may prescribe for you some form of auditory training where you're kind of like you're exercising this muscle to make it more efficient so that the sound coming in through the ear is processed better in the brain. I think of it like the physical therapy to like your knee replacement. If you get a knee replacement and all you do is walk around, you're going to get a certain amount of functionality. If you do the physical therapy in conjunction with that, well, now you've got like full range of motion. You can strengthen those areas. Your auditory system is similar, so we got to build up the muscles along with good technology.
In your study, was there a control group?
So in that particular study, there was just the participants that were responding to the questions, but there was a Tent 1A and a Tent 2A study as well that were actually done abroad in Ireland, and there were control groups in that study. So they were trying to replicate the results of that study in the real world.
Is it common for you to wake up and the screechings in your ears all day long until you go to sleep?
Is it common? I would say, again, it's not uncommon for people to perceive their tinnitus throughout their day. More commonly, people will say, it's constant. I hear it all the time. And so one of the first things that we'll do is say, well, what is your environment like? Is it super quiet like it is in this room, or can we enrich your environment in some capacity to just make you less aware of what's happening inside?
Okay. And then why would it be worse at night?
Are
Or
you
louder at night?
Are you sleeping in a quiet room?
Before even bedtime.
Okay.
It's typically loud. My work environment's loud. When I get home, my home life is loud. But as I'm going into it's time to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously I can hear it more because my brain is like, it's there.
Right. One of the biggest, and they call them exacerbating factors or things that trigger tinnitus response, the number one thing on that list is stress. So is your day stressful, not just from kind of like it's busy, it's stressful in the way we think of stress? Is it also auditorily stressful? Mm-hmm. So if you've got a lot of sound coming down on you all day long, that takes a toll over the course of time. So are there ways where you can kind of reduce some of that stress?
I don't know. I got to think about that.
Okay.
And then does it happen for like being around loud things for years? And that could cause those little hair follicles to damage?
Yes.
And then
Noise exposure is actually the number one cause of acquired hearing loss. And it seems the world gets noisier every year. It's a noisy world out there.
Okay, I think for time, if we maybe could hold and continue, what do you think?
Sure. I have
Is that
just a
okay?
few more slides, and then how about I get through those, and then we'll answer everyone's questions. I won't leave here until your questions are answered. Because I want to give you resources and I want to give you actions to take. So it's not just information, but it's motivation for you. Oftentimes I'm asked, when should I get my hearing tested? I will tell you, when I rule the world, we will have been testing you throughout your lifespan. We typically test children because we understand that speech and language and having hearing is important for that. And then we kind of forget about you as a society until you get older and you start saying, I'm having trouble hearing, my wife is nagging me, I'm withdrawing from conversations. So because I don't rule the world and other people come up with guidelines, our standard guideline is if you are age 50 or above, you should at minimum have a baseline so that we know where you are right now, and then we can start to monitor you over time, just like any other part of your health care. Your ears should live in that world with you. If you are diagnosed with hearing loss, so you already know you have a hearing loss, then we actually want to see you every year, because hearing loss can happen very gradually. It can change subtly. And so we want to be aware of those changes so that any treatment options are adjusted accordingly. And you have so many resources here in Longmont. I mean, don't we live in a great town? I mean, it's like insane, the things that we have here. And one of the things that we, as a part of this presentation, want to draw your attention to is all the amazing things that you have in your public library. So the library, and Michelle being like spearheading these efforts, I love it so much. They have librarians. These people are so brilliant, and they can tell you all the different things that you have available to you in the library to use. There are books, there are audio books on hearing and hearing loss, and stories of people with hearing loss. They actually made a hearing care wellness bag that you can check out from the library, and Michelle actually brought the bag with her out front where you checked in, to just kind of show you both from an informational standpoint, as well as kind of like the books and things that are included in that bag that you can check out. It's free of charge. There are movies, there's TV shows that you can watch, and then there's informational talks that you can come to. But lots and lots of resources. I always like to plug the library as well. If you are trying to do some auditory training, some of the things that we like to recommend is that you listen to audiobooks as you're reading them. So you're getting the visual input and the auditory input at the same time. So that strengthens that connection for your brain. So it's identifying things, and you can check out tons of books that are paired with audiobooks. And I just think it's spectacular. The other thing that I want to bring up is that a lot of times people will say, I can't afford hearing aids. I can't afford hearing help, because they feel like they've heard lots of stories that hearing aids are thousands and thousands of dollars. I don't have that. Therefore, I can't get help. We have a nonprofit. So I'm a founding member of Hearing the Call Colorado, and a group of colleagues, so about 6 of us across the state, started a nonprofit in 2020 during COVID when a lot of resources dried up. So we see people that are income qualified. And so if you have financial need, we have a mechanism for you to get low cost or no cost hearing aids and hearing care for your lifespan. So please don't let financial needs stand in your way, because it's too important. It's too important for your lives and the people you love, and it's really, really important for your brain. So if you need information, there's information out on the back table, little cards. There's information and applications available at the website. You can also consider making a donation if you would like. And that's all I have. But we'll take questions as long as you have them. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I just wanted to add something about tinnitus. There are certain medications that can also cause that ringing in your ears.
Very much.
And I know that personally.
Yes.
And when I quit taking that medication, I had no idea that it was doing it. But when I quit taking that medication, it was gone. So I think people need to be aware. And I think any physicians, looking at hearing loss or tinnitus, need to be aware of the kinds of medications people are taking, because that might be one of the reasons that they're having that problem.
Thank you for bringing that up. So medications there are certain classifications of medications that can be toxic to your ear. They can cause hearing loss, and then some are more common to cause ringing in your ears as well. So always talk to your doctor about any side effects that you're concerned about. You should be able to read them also in the literature with any medication you're taking as well. Sometimes they can change dosages, or they can even change medications if need be.
Okay, I'm coming.
Are you familiar with the VA system? Are you familiar with the VA system and their care for hearing aids and that sort of thing?
So only from the standpoint of if you are a veteran and you have a service-related type of hearing loss, or that they can identify, then they should provide you with hearing care and hearing aids. So if you think that it might be service connected, it is definitely worth your time to get in touch with the VA, get an appointment, get evaluated, see if that's something that they can cover, because you earned it. Yeah.
Just a follow-up question about tinnitus. You mentioned that treatment elimination is not a goal, not likely. Being a recent participant in tinnitus, can it just go away as quickly as it came on? Or is it here to stay?
That's a great question. I think the more I know about tinnitus, the more I know there's no rules around it. For some people, it may be more intermittent. It may start and end in a short period of time. There's actually a classification of tinnitus called spontaneous tinnitus that pretty much everybody has, where you'll hear like a little fullness in your ears, and then you'll hear ringing for a very short period of time, and then it goes away. So maybe, but hard to know. Yeah. All right. Look at that. I finished early.
Anyone else?
Woohoo!
Everyone good?
Another thought.
Sure. Hang on just a sec. Let's get a mic for you.
Can it make your ears hurt?
Physically,
Yeah.
I would say that is not a common complaint. Again, I would kind of couch it like disturbing. I don't like that emotional response. Physical pain is typically
Kinda like an ache.
something else.
Okay.
Ache, I would have looked at by a physician, because pain is not okay. Yeah.
All right, last call, everybody. Great.
Michelle, thank you so much. Thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it. If there's anything that I can do to answer any other questions, please feel free to let me know. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you all. Good night.